I hope you have seen the previous video on the perfect competition. This video is about the second part of the market structure, that is imperfect competition. As I said in the last lecture, market structures are classified into two types. One is perfectly competitive market and second one is imperfectly competitive market, or perfect competition and imperfect competition. Perfect competition is classified into three categories: monopoly, monopolistic competition, and oligopoly. But we'll be discussing about one more type of imperfect competition, that is duopoly, in this particular video. In the last video, we discussed about milk market and how milk becomes, or milk market in a village becomes, a perfectly competitive market. But let us look at another situation. Here what you find is several people trying to board a train from a railway station. And you find many a times the trains in India are overcrowded. It has been a point of discussion in several places. And why are the Indian trains so crowded? There could be several reasons for this. But one major reason is we have got only one major player in the market which deals in, or which is engaged in the business of rail travel, which is nothing but IRCTC, or Indian Railways, and with its motto of safety, security and punctuality, it transports the entire Indian population across the country. And there are no competitors to this particular player in the market. So we can say, since there is monopoly in the market, everybody must depend on the services of Indian Railways to avail the rail transportation through railway system. So this particular situation is called monopoly. And what is a monopoly? Now, we have seen in the previous video, there are people selling milk. There will be several people, and the entire people in the village together constitute the milk industry. But here, in this particular context, in the context of monopoly, the firm itself is the industry. There are no players other than this particular company. So here it could be railways, but in other products there could be other monopolies also. And since Indian Railways is a monopoly, they are the price makers. They are not price takers. They decide what shall be the price of going from point A to point B. And there are large barriers to entry. So if somebody wants to start a railway business, it is not easy. They need to get a lot of permissions from the government, and it is a very tedious process to start maybe a new railway company, if at all it is legally permitted. And it all experience downward sloping demand curve. Now we have seen, when we talked about demand earlier, we have seen all the firms experience downward sloping demand curve. The reason is because of the operation of law of diminishing marginal utility. But here we are talking about downward sloping demand curve because in perfectly competitive market, the demand curve is not sloping downwards, rather it slopes as a straight line which is parallel to the x-axis. And another feature of monopoly is that there are no close substitutes. There are no other substitutes. We could say there are trams and other things in cities, but it is not a substitute for the Indian railway transportation system. And this particular seller has got full control over the supply of railway seats in our country. So these are the various features of monopoly. Now let us look at another situation from a street food sector. Now what you find here is a tourism destination which sells several street foods. All of them are selling different products, and the design is different, the light ambience is different, right? The taste will be different. So they will be selling different products, and you can find there are numerous sellers out here in this particular street itself, and there are large number of buyers also will be there. And if you think what are the characteristics of a restaurant business in a tourism destination, we can come up with few points. And one important thing is there are large number of buyers and sellers in this particular market, and the product of one particular person is different from other person. Though they are all selling food items, the taste, the look and feel, everything is different from one person to other person, and they all involve selling cost. So to distinguish their product from, or their firm from the next firm, they have to distinguish in some way or other. So they give advertisements and they incur other additional selling cost. And there are not many barriers to entry and also to exit. So anybody can easily start a street food business. And if you look at the customers don't have much information. They only see the food products. They don't know how much is the actual cost of production. They don't know what are the ingredients being put into this particular food item. So they only see the food and they only see the menu card. So there is lack of information from the part of the customers. And the demand for their products are actually elastic. Now these sellers, since there are a lot of sellers around, they can increase their sales by reducing the price. But if they increase their price beyond a point, they will not be able to sell. That is, their sales depends on the price at which they sell. And there are non-price competitive situation also. So since they cannot increase the price beyond a point, they need to earn extra profit by making certain other differentiating factors. They can generate additional revenue by lighting up their store. They can by adding few other advertisement aspects and things like that. They have to make certain other differentiation to their business, and that is non-price competition. And when all these factors are present, such as large number of buyers and sellers, differentiated product, involvement of selling cost, low barriers to entry and exit, lack of information from the part of customers, and elasticity of demand and non-price competition, we call this particular market situation as monopolistic market situation. So you should not confuse between monopolistic and monopoly. These are two different things, actually two entirely opposite market situation. Monopoly is a situation where there is only one seller, large number of buyers are there, but here there are large number of buyers and large number of sellers. Now let us take a small trip. If you look at the airline industry in India, you find almost all the players here. One of the finest or the number one airline industry is Indigo. Even according to the latest industry reports, it is Indigo which is leading. And there are other players like Air India, Go Air, Air Asia, SpiceJet, Vistara. So these are other players in the market. Actually, there are only a handful of airline industry or handful of players in the airline industry in India. And what happens if one particular industry or one particular player increase their fare, the price of the ticket? How it affects the other, what will be the reaction of the other players in the market? Now they will respond accordingly. So if a player increases the price, the other members in the market, because as there are only few members in the market, they may not increase the price, as a result of which the company which increases the price stands to lose. So this kind of situation is called oligopolistic market condition, oligopoly. So oligopoly is characterized by 6 different features or characteristics, and there are only few firms, only handful of firms will be there in the market. And they are all interdependent, because the action of one particular player will certainly influence and will attract reaction of the other players. So they are interdependent. The demand of one particular business is dependent on the actions of the other player in the market. And since they cannot increase or decrease the price beyond a point, they are actively engaged in non-price competition. So they need to invest a lot in the advertisement and make other campaigns to attract more customers to their company or to their product. And there are barriers to entry and exit of firms. And that's why there are only a handful of firms, because there are legal restrictions will be there, and maybe there will be a collusion among this particular players in the market, so which does not allow new player to come into the market. So there are barriers to entry and sometimes also to exit of the firms. And since they have to incur a lot of advertisement, other expenses, selling cost is a significant portion of the cost of the airlines or this oligopolistic market condition, or players in the oligopolistic market condition. And as there is a lot of interdependency among the players, they tend to behave or make a collusion or form associations to control the demand and the price situation. And therefore, group behavior is a common feature of oligopolistic market situation. And you are probably watching this video on an Android or iOS phone, or a Windows PC or a Mac. That brings us to the next type of market, that is duopoly. So Apple phones and Android phones, these are the two major players, or probably the only two players right now which they control 80 to 90% of the total market in the world. And this particular situation is called duopoly. So duopoly characteristics are, there are only two producers, and these producers have got strategic interdependence. That means the behavior of or the activities of one player significantly influences the demand and the very existence of the other player in the market. So there is a high strategic interdependence between these two players, and hence they might opt for a collusive behavior. That means they join hands to sell their products. That need not always be the case. They may decide to have a collusive behavior or not. That is up to them. But there are several places, there are several sectors where such kind of collusive behavior is available. For example, in the case of truck industry and maybe jewelry shops, they engage in collusive behavior. The level of competition naturally will be very fierce. Now everybody wants to prove, there are only two players in the market, they want to prove their product is the better one, and to capture more market share they engage in a very intense business or market competition. And by the very fact that there are only two players in the market, we can see that there are entry barriers. So for a new player to come into the field, it may not be that easy. And when a new player tries to make their presence in the market, the existing players may join together and reduce their price, so that it becomes unaffordable for the new player to compete in the market. And as there are only two players in the market, the economies of scale are high. So since they are able to produce in large quantities and sell, the per unit cost will be much less, and hence the players in the duopolistic market condition can sell the products at very, very low rates. And to sum up the entire discussion, the various features of the perfect competition, monopolistic, oligopoly and monopoly are listed here. You can pause the video, you can read through this and make note of this. And finally, to conclude, the market power, the power of the or the strength of the product in the market can be identified, can be discussed with the help of this particular chart. Say, perfect competition situation where the firms do not have much market power. But in the case of monopolistic competition, the situation is rather a little more better. But in oligopoly, there are only few sellers or few producers, so they will be able to control the market much better than the monopolistic or perfectly competitive firms. But when you come to duopoly and in the case of monopoly, they have got the most power in the market. They actually dominate the market. They make the price. They are the only players in the market. All the buyers are dependent on the actions of these particular organizations in the market. That is duopoly or monopoly. So monopoly yields the most market power. The perfectly competitive situation, the firms under this particular situation yields the least amount of market power. Thank you.